Alright, here we go for the next stage of this figure. So in the last short video, I just sketched in the shadows, and now I'm going to work on the eyes. And again, I wanted to get those shadows, especially the dark lines around the eye, so after I paint the fine details, when I come back in and finish the skin, I don't have to go as close to the eye, and I'm less likely to screw up what I've already done. Okay, so for the eyes, this is kind of a spectrum of approaches that I use for the eyes, depending on what scale I'm at. Obviously, when you're doing 28 millimeters, you're going to have a lot less detail in your eyes than if you're doing a larger scale bust. 75 is kind of right in the middle, where I start trying to put in a lot more detail and have varying levels of success. But I'm going to go a little more detailed here than, say, I would on a 54 or a 28. But the same things I'll carry through those larger scales and just have a little more success there, of course. Just take the handle off, just to give me a little better grip on it for up close work. So I go through a number of stages here, and this first one may not make a difference, but I like to try and do it anyways. I like to begin by base coating the eyes with a pink. I'll come back over that with the whites, but ideally I leave a little bit of the pink just at the corners of the eye. So for that, I take a skin tone. Here I'm just picking my rosy shadow, and then I mix in a little bit of red, this violet red here. Don't need to go too much. It turns red pretty quick, so just a little bit of red in that skin tone. And I'm using one of my smaller brushes here, this 000. And get a decent view with the camera in the way. And again, the important thing is to get into the corners of the eye with this pink. Though it also helps to define that top border, a little bit of that dark shadow most likely got into the eye itself. So kind of this pink acts as an intermediate stage before I get to the full-on white. And I'll rotate the figure around, whatever I need to do to try and get a good view to see where I'm going, if I've really got the extent of the eye. Sorry, I might pull it off camera just so I get a little, the camera's in the way, it's a little better view over here, so apologies. Okay, so one eye done, switch to the other eye. And I don't mind if this bleeds a little bit onto that lower eyelid. The pink will actually be a nice boundary between the bottom of the eye. The top of the eye, we have a nice dark border there, that dark brown that I applied before. The top, or the bottom of the upper eyelid is going to be in shadow, whereas the top of the lower eyelid will be in highlight. So that dark border there doesn't really make sense. It tends to make the eye look cartoony. So a bit of pink in there isn't the worst thing in the world. Your side. All right. Rough idea there. Pink in the eyes. Now, what I might do is come in and add a little bit more red to that mix, just darken it slightly with that violet red. Just dab on those inner corners of the eye. A little more shadow towards the inside because of the brows there. So a little darker pink there. Isn't the worst thing. And again, this stage is going to be very subtle at this scale. The 75 millimeter scale, you're most likely never going to even notice that this was done. So if you want to skip this stage, it's not really going to be a problem. But obviously, as you go up in scales, those fine details are going to be more noticeable and really help take your figure to the next level. And I don't even bother with this on anything smaller than this scale. This is really the smallest scale I do this at, because at 54s, I mean, you barely see it here, and you really won't see it at the 54 millimeter scale. All right, so with that done, the next step is to put in the whites of the eyes. Now, one of the main tricks here is to not use white. Again, think of the eye as a sphere, and if you look at it, you might see the full highlighting. The top of the sphere is going to be that pure white, and then as you move down, it's going to get darker and darker and darker. Well, on the eyes, you're not looking at the very top of the sphere, you're looking at the sides. So you want to have darker color than pure white. Again, otherwise the eyes just look, it's too bright, it pops too much if you're using pure white there. So I'm going to pick a light gray. Let's see where here, and you know, the exact shade of gray doesn't really matter. This is Reaper's Dusky Skin highlight. You know, it's a gray. But I think a subtle, you know, it's certainly enough of a difference from the pure white to that gray. And now this is going to be my darker color for the eye. I'm going to put a little bit of shading on the eyeball itself. So I'll probably go from that dusky skin, maybe up to this weathered stone. And again, it's not a huge step up, still below the pure white, but it just gives you a little bit of variation there. And again, you know, how much of this is going to be noticeable at that small scale, hard to say. But mainly, you know, on the inside of the eye, where it's a little bit more in shadow, I'll have the dusky skin, and then on the outer edge of the eye, I'll have that slightly lighter weathered stone, just to give it a bit of variation there, at least some acknowledgement that there is some shading or differences in light. Add a little bit of water to this. Thin that out a bit on the palette. All right. So a bit of that gray. I'll come in here and go back over the eyes. And again, I'm going to cover most of the eye with this gray, but I'm okay leaving a little bit in the corner with that pink still showing. And again, you might cover it up entirely, you know, just a shake of the hand and that pink is gone entirely. So you know, it's a subtle touch. And obviously if I accidentally get rid of it and I want to put it back in, I just go back to my pink, you know, just repeat the process. And again, that lower eyelid is going to be highlighted, so if some of this goes on top of that, that's not the worst thing in the world, but I'm trying to be more careful with that upper boundary, going right up to it with the gray, but try not to go over it. And this is a stage where I will go back in and fix that upper boundary as needed. I will probably do that next. Because as fine a detail work as this is, obviously putting in the iris and pupil are finer still, and that's where I really don't want to, once I do that, I really don't want to get too close to the eye for fear of screwing up that hard work. And certainly here, you know, light is important, getting a good view, so you'll see I'm holding the figure upside down, just whatever helps me get a better view of eyeball, those edges. Just to the bottom boundary, and the right eye looks fine from here. So again, you know, it's a gray, but it doesn't look overly dark. You know, it looks fine for that angle. All right, let me put a bit of the weathered stone on my palette, and I'll get the other sides of the eyes, or the outer sides of the eyes. We're going to have a little more light, a little bit lighter color. And again, this is just a real subtle shift, hardly noticeable at the scale. Not something I even mess with on 54s. But again, kind of at 75 is when I start trying to bring in those more details. And on a bust especially, I spend more time because you're going to notice the difference in color from one side of the eye to the other side. It's bigger, it's easier to see. Here it's a bit more subtle, but I still try and just give it a little something. And I'm not doing any intermediate stages. I'm just going from one color to the next because you're going to have that iris right in the middle of the eye, and so any work on those intermediate stages is just wasted. All right, so here's a point where I'll take a break, turn upside down, get a good look at that border between the eye and the upper eyelid, and see, did I get over that at all? And here, not really. I don't really see much needs to be fixed. But if anything happens, I go back into my dark brown, and we'll just carefully edge that top section, as needed. Again, here, don't really need much. I think it looks fine. And you edge the top part, you get a little bit on the eye. Well, go back to your grays, go back over, and go back and forth, just over and over and over again until you finally get that clean line you're looking for. And I might, again, kind of reevaluate where those whites end, how much of that pink in the corner is still showing of those eyes, roughly the same width. I don't want one side to look too off from the other side. But overall, pretty happy with that. All right, so the next step is to put in the irises. So here is, it's worth taking a moment and thinking, where's your figure looking? Do I want the eyes just to be dead center? Are they off to one side? And if so, what side makes sense? This figure, he is tilted, he's twisting this way. So, having the eyes off to this side more, would make sense. He's looking that way. Center, still fine. He's turned his head, but he's still looking, ahead from where his face is pointing. Having the eyes looking to this side, it would be weird. You turn your head, but you're looking the other way. It just doesn't really make sense unless you've got a diorama scene and there's something over here that he's trying to catch out the corner of his eye. But without something more complicated to give it a reason, I'd say forward and to this side makes sense. This side, not so much. So I might have it be slightly off center, but I don't necessarily want to go full, real far to the side. Just play around, see what I like. And actually, I think doing off center is going to be easier when you try and have both of those eyes exactly in the center. It's easy to have them a little too far apart, a little too close together. Those sort of things can definitely make them look a bit odd, a bit off. Okay. So color for the eye. I'm going to begin with a dark color for the iris, and then go back in with a lighter color over that. Obviously there are a variety of eye colors out there, and obviously if you're doing fantasy figures, you have even a wider array at your disposal, or sci-fi figures. Here, I'm obviously, this is historical, so I'm going to try and keep it reasonable. But for the most part, whatever I'm doing, I like to do light colored eyes. So for realistic figures, blue or green is ideal. And the main reason behind that, is just it's easier to pick up on. If you're going to go to the trouble of putting in the iris, those darker browns tend to just fade into the black. The two just merge together. It's hard to really make out the difference. Whereas if you're doing a lighter blue or a green, it's going to pop much more against that background color. And again, if I'm doing this is 54, this is where I start, or sorry, this is 75 millimeter. This is where I start doing those sort of extra details on a 54. I've done some where I do put in the irises, but there are other ones where I just completely omit it and just just kind of merge the pupil and the iris together, and just do a single dark color, either black or a dark brown, and just not worry about those individual those distinct parts of the eye because it's just too small to see. 75, again, it's small, but I think you can still make it out. So it's worth it to put that extra step in there. Right. Sorry, I'm taking a bit of time here. My color was a bit clogged up, so I had to clear the obstruction. Get that dark blue that I want to begin with. And we'll get back on track. All right. Problem solved. Here we go. And at this point, I'm really just going to try and grab the center of where I want that eye pointed. Here's going to be just off to the side. Oh. This is obviously very delicate work. All right. And it's really just kind of at this point, this is just a line straight down. It's not the full eye. And I've bled onto the bottom part, and that's okay. That's okay. I'll fix that. So I just need to finish the eye, but I'm just putting a little dot there, and then I'm going to go to the other eye and put a little dot there. And this is where I start to figure out, how am I positioning this? Are they looking in the same direction? Are they too close together, too far apart? Yeah, those look decent. I think the spacing seems to work. And now I'll go back in and get that to an appropriate size for the eye. And obviously, if that was a little too far apart, as I go back in, I could expand it a little more towards the inside. If it's too close together, expand a little more towards the outside. Maybe I'll flip them upside down, see if I get a little better angle there. Keep hitting the edge of the lower eyelid with the brush as I'm trying to get in there. And again, that's fine. I'll correct that. All right, that eye looks good, so we'll go on to the other one. Yeah, just take your time. This is not the simplest task, especially at these smaller scales. And if I screw up, I've got my white. Just go back in, wipe the eye out, and start over. There's plenty of times where I've done 2, 3, 4 attempts just to get the eye right. It's worth it in the end. It's it has to be a part of the figure people are going to focus on, people are going to look at. So take the extra time you need to get it right. All right, so there's the basic eye in. Trying to see if I need to do anything else. Sometimes with that skin shade there, with the lower eyelid bleeding over onto that, it can be a little bit deceiving. So I'm just going to come back in here with that skin tone and just clean that up. And this is not necessary at this point, but it's mostly just for me to get a better view of how does my eye actually look. There we go. All right. Looks reasonable. I think the eye on his right is just a little bit off. I'm going to expand that blue just a little more to the size. So just take your time, work on it till it feels right. Ever so slightly, looking towards the outside there. A little bit more. Just fine touches till you're happy. All right, I think that's good. So, at this point, you could call it done. It's just kind of a dark blue, so it's a bit of a mix between the iris and the pupil kind of merged together, and that could be fine. And on, say, a 54 or a 28, I might be willing to call it there. But this is a 75. I got a little more room to work with, so I'm going to try to get a little bit fancier and ideally not screw it up. So I'm going to go to a lighter blue shade. That one's clogged too. There we go. All right. And I'm going to come back in and attempt to go over the irises that I already had, but kind of leaving the darker blue more as a border there. And were this a 90 millimeter or a bust where I had even more room to work, I would try and put the lighter blue more on the bottom of the iris. It's kind of this inverted shape if you look at the actual diagram of an eye. You'll see it's going in. So the bottom part of that iris is where the light hits, not the top. And I'm kind of doing the same thing here. I'm maybe edging a little bit more towards the bottom, but this is so small. I'm just trying to get the lighter blue inside the iris and not care as much about the exact placement. And this is where you're going to start seeing the eyes pop a bit more. And again, how much of that is on the camera, I don't know. But I'll try to get that lighter blue in there. It looks good on his left eye. Let me do a little bit more on his right eye. And I could go lighter still and mix some white in there and get a really light blue if I want it to really, really pop. And yeah, why not? Let's put a little bit. Let's go a little bit lighter even still. See if I can get it to stand out more. Again, if I'm going all the work, I want to be able to see it. And that lighter blue is going to pop more. So mixing a bit of Reaper's Ghost White, kind of a bluish white, into the light blue, even lighter blue. Ever so carefully. Just dab at the eye. And again, it's small work. It's easy to go over out of the lines a little farther than you want. But ideally, if you can just leave just a hint of that original dark blue along the sides, makes a nice border between this lighter blue and the white of the eye. The two are easier to distinguish. All right, I'm relatively happy with that. see a bit of a light blue there in the iris, or in the middle of the iris, ideally. All right, and let's go for broke. Next step, let's put in the pupil. Now, opposite of how we did the whites of the eye, there, well, let's decide I don't want to be pure white. The pupil is a void. So there's really no light coming out, hitting that. So I'm going to go to my pure black. I don't necessarily need to use an intermediate shade. And this is where I'm more likely to screw it up and have to start over, and so be it. Very, very carefully get a bit of that black and try and just hit the middle of the eye. And a couple practice swings, as it were, just not quite happy with paint on the brush, positioning. Lower eyelid, I want to come in kind of at a softer angle, and that lower eyelid keeps getting in the way. Real small dot there. Come in on the other eye. And there we go. Again, kind of hard to see on the camera. Apologies for that. But it's not perfect, but it's at this scale, it's the best I'm going to be able to manage, I think. All right, now the last step for the eyes. We've got the whites of the eye, we've got the pinks in the corner, we've got the iris, got the pupil, we've got all that stuff in there. And the last step is I want to add a catch light. And again, something that more likely to do on larger scales, but 75 is kind of around the point where I start trying to add it if I can. Now here, it's a reflection. It's a bright, bright light. So I do want to use my pure white. And the nice thing, since I had the whites of the eyes weren't pure white, the catch light will stand out even more as it's that much brighter. And this is, just like the pupil, really just trying to come in and put just a tiniest little dot in there. And ideally, I'm going to go off center. And there, got a little dot right in that eye. Let's see if I can get the camera to focus on it. There you go. You see that little catch light right there in his left eye. And now I'm going to do my best to repeat that process for the right eye and not screw it up. But again, it just gives that eye just that little bit of life that really, I think, really makes the finishing touch on it. All right. One done, one more to go. And I'll try and position these in the same way. So the catch light on the left eye is slightly off center to this side. I'm going to try to do the same thing on the right eye. Adjust the fleck on the edge of the brush. All right, got one in, and I've gone a little bit too far with that one. So I'm going to come in here with that shadow tone, clean up the top of the eye. And then see, it's still a little bit much. Go in my dark blue. Just try and cut that down ever so slightly. There. And that's more in keeping with the other eye. And that white did edge over so slightly here. Just get that border done again. And I'm going to clean up just for our final view. Bottom eyelid for the skin tone. Good enough. Okay, so give me a view. There you go. Got catch lights in both of the eyes. And it just gives that little bit more life. Okay, well, let's pause here. This is, it's just a tiny little bit. It takes a long time, but it's worth, especially the face, it's worth putting in that extra time in there to get it to look right. So the next step will be to come back in and start blending those shadow tones back into the mid-tone of the skin and go up to the highlights, and that's going to be even longer still, but we're slowly getting there.